Hello everyone. Today we have another group discussions on entrepreneurships, and already our audience know all of the important guests from around the world. Professor Rajesh, Mr. Robs, Dr. Eric, everybody joined with World Talent Economy Forum. Today they will discuss about the entrepreneurship, startup, and startup ecosystem, especially people from around the world. Even last day we do our session with Africa, Tunisia, especially around the world. Every developing country, they are facing a lot of challenges in COVID-19 situations, and they want guideline that how they can build a better ecosystem, and they can create more startup, and they can create more new entrepreneurs. This is the objective of every country right now, and many policymakers, government, corporations, everybody actually like asking me questions that how they can create more better startup ecosystem. So today we have the expert. They have huge experience on how to build up the startup ecosystem. Their audience, you can ask questions to them directly. Even you can ask question World Talent Economy Forum, they will give you answer, and most importantly today they will share their experience, their thought, and how we can build better entrepreneurial ecosystem. So hello, Professor Rajesh, Mr. Rao, and Mr. Eric Du. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you for having
Yes,
us.
yes, sir. Sir, I have questions, and like I directly want to ask you a question that how we can build better ecosystem for entrepreneurship, because you can see the World Talent Economy Forum, we are moving around the world, and many policymakers and the corporation and government, they are joining, and everybody facing problem right now in COVID-19 situations. Economical challenges is more, and now it's actually everybody wants solution. So how we can do these solutions, and I want to start with Professor Rajesh here.
Okay, so the primary issue that we are all facing with COVID is that of job loss, and US has lost about 40 million jobs, and India has lost 125 million or something like that. It is amazing, numbers. When things come back, how do we bring these jobs back is the question. So can corporations and governments create this kind of jobs in such a short time? There's absolutely no. The corporations are going to wait for economy to settle before they even do that. So the primary job creators will be entrepreneurs, startups, which even a Kaufman study already showed that how 0 to 5-year-old startups pretty much created most of the new jobs in the country, in the US, from some 87 to 2007 or something like that. So we have to use them as the primary source of jobs. Now the next question is, how do you create these entrepreneurs? And that is where the real interesting part comes. So we need the ecosystem, and we need to have people program to create these entrepreneurs so that they can start the companies and create jobs and such. But most of the entrepreneurship creation programs today are top down. They start with funds, they have programs and such, but they do not change the mindset of a kid who's in school or college to say, I want to take up entrepreneurship. They may have just building infrastructure from the top, but we also need something from the bottom which starts to change the mindset of the kids and the skill set. So these two things have to come together, and that is where the third element to that is the ecosystem. Ecosystem primarily is at MIT they have 250 new startups every year. If I look at the kids who start companies in the hostel rooms, in the dorm rooms, it may come to another 200, maybe about 450 new companies that they can start. The question is, the kids who come there are exactly the same as kids who go to any other college. There is no big difference. But why does it happen there and not in some other places? Primarily because when they walk into an ecosystem which kind of supports them, which kind of promotes them, and then they become that, and that becomes a norm. When other kids are starting companies, a new kid who joins the school sees that, and that becomes a norm, and they do that. That is the power of ecosystem, and I think that can be created from bottom up.
Yes.
I just want to add a comment to that, and I completely agree about the ecosystem and the mindset, because I went to UC Santa Barbara for undergraduate and University of Pennsylvania for graduate for a PhD in math, and in both places, academics was, topmost. That you have to get your A's, you got to learn X, you got to learn Y, but there was never any inspiration, any push by professors or even fellow students to say, hey, let's make something. The concept of make something was completely absent among the student body, among the faculty, everywhere, But, at MIT, it's not, certainly not at Stanford, probably not at Berkeley, although I'm not really sure. But, certainly Stanford and MIT, that's where everybody goes there saying, how am I going to make this succeed? That is, and you need to have that as a constant. It's like a stew pot that's constantly boiling, and
yes.
then the new potatoes are the young potatoes. You throw it in there. You got to get stewed in that, getting cooked in that mindset.
Marinated.
They're going to come out tasty.
Yeah, Mr. Rob, how do you want to see about this entrepreneurial ecosystem?
Well, so another thing that's missing right now is internships. When the COVID disaster hit, all the internships were pretty much turned off. Now my degrees are in business. Both my graduate, undergraduate, even my AA degrees in business. And only the AA degrees provided practical knowledge and actually how to do anything. Everything else was theoretical. So even with business degrees, I wasn't really set up well for my first startup, and I've done 3 of them. So the end result is those internships are critical in terms of teaching the basic skills and how to run a small company. Because when you're a small firm, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people, you need some core skills. I mean, you need to know how to get through regulatory approvals. You need to know how to do a payroll. You need to figure out how to keep the electronics running, because you're not going to have an IT department. All that practical stuff you pick up as an intern, including how to deal with internal politics. I mean, I've seen a number of people coming out of school from top colleges, and they blow out within weeks because they think that businesses run just like schools, and it is not. It's a very different environment, and things that schools tolerate, managers do not. And certainly the rules surrounding things like sexual harassment, stuff that I think would be taught in school, doesn't make it through to their business experience. And a lot of these kids just make some incredibly foolish. Remember, we had one guy, first business trip, he got so drunk on the plane that he got thrown off the plane. I mean, just basic stuff that you'd figure anybody would know, that is not taught. And yet if they just spent 6 months as an intern, they would have seen that they need to fit in with the working group. They need to understand that it's a cooperative environment. They also need to understand that they may come in with a degree in, say, accounting, but in a small company, they might be asked to do mechanical repair. It's not like you could pass over to another 30 people. You're it when it comes to a small company. And if somebody needs something done and nobody else is stepping up, you got to get it done. And that's stuff you learn by actually doing. And this focus on education as opposed to practical knowledge has been incredibly damaging to creating kids that are capable of entering a job or running, as opposed to sitting in their first day wondering, what the hell have they done? I don't know anything this guy's asking me to do, and my school didn't get me set up for it. So the loss of internships is a critical problem right now. And I only know one company, Hewlett Packard, that has recognized this and is actually putting in training. So their interns are now going through specialized training because they can't bring them in because there's nobody at the plant site. So they're actually going through and educating them about the practical aspects of working in a company, things they didn't get in school. So when they do get a job, they can actually do the job.
So I wanted to start pick up on what Eric said about practical experience. This is primarily for we go through education systems, like degrees and such, primarily learning all the theory and the book knowledge, but most of them have never been applied. And so unless you apply, you don't actually learn it. You can actually memorize it, you can write an exam with it, but a few days later, it's all gone out. But the learning has to be almost hands-on. for it to retain.
Yep.
And the most interesting thing, I do these workshops, maker workshops for school kids in rural places, kids who had never used a computer before. We give them a little bit of we teach them how to do ideation, design products, CAD, coding, all these kind of things. And you should see them light up, and in 2 days you could see them actually do all these things, and which shows that the ability is always there, but that intervention to give them that kind of exposure actually makes all the difference in some of these kids. And this also gives them this confidence to learn. When you start to try something, you fail, you kind of feel lost, and then you try it again, and then you suddenly make it happen. What it actually gives you is it gives you the confidence to learn, in addition to expanding your zone of competence. So the hands-on experience is totally lacking. And Rob, I hear you. MBAs are primarily a degree for management, but not for entrepreneurship. Right. Okay, your entrepreneurship doesn't need a degree, but that learning, the ability to learn, read the place, understand how things work, and I think it is very, very different from a degreed outcome. Yeah.
It's the more critical part. It's the experience is what makes you successful. The education's nice to have. It gets you the interviews, get you in, and as you advance, the practical knowledge you picked up in education can be applied. But it doesn't really help you a whole heck of a lot in those first couple of years, particularly if you're working for a small company and you're being asked to do things that you've never seen before.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I also agree with Rob when you're talking about the team and how they can screw up. I think the number one cause for a startup to fail, as in finally dissolving, is team chemistry breaking up. Because you could last a long time if you have good team chemistry and you're not making money. You're willing to suffer. You eat ramen for months, if you have good team chemistry and you can keep pushing and pushing. But the reason that a company just says, fuck it, we're done, is because the team chemistry and people don't trust each other and they're backstabbing and all these other stuff. And that is where I think the schools can help by getting more team-oriented schoolwork done. I know in my college, in my high school, everything is done by yourself. Homework done by yourself. Exams you have to do yourself. Rarely did we ever had group projects. I don't think I remember a single group project except for my final senior thesis in college. Right. And that's it, and
no teaching collaboration really. It's I mean, you had some in chemistry where you might have a team, but it was a team to the project, not like you were pulling together 10 people to build something better. Where you got that was often in sports. So you got your collaboration stuff if you play sports, but not all sports.
Music and sports are a great place for those things.
Yeah, with football, maybe tennis, not so much.
That's true.
So most of academics is the individual championship game,
right.
And so the interesting thing is, if you do better, if you do bad or someone else do better, you go down in ranks. Right. Okay. Yeah. So first thing, what happens is that if you can't do any better, let's actually make sure that somebody else doesn't do any better, so that you can do better. So these are the kind of thinking that the school kid kind of who graduates through all the school and college, when they come into a company, that's the attitude that that is what they've been trained on. And they come in, and now a startup is a team game, it's not an individual championship. So that chemistry has to absolutely change, and that training has to happen in schools, not even in college. It has to start very, very early, in team projects. So
they learn how to identify. So they learn how to identify trust versus schmoozers and con people and all that other thing. You have to learn how to do that, otherwise you get what you get. It is what it is, right?
Yeah, I have specific questions. Even example, in my personal life, I help. I'm actually from Bangladesh. I help to build up Cambrians, United. They have university, school, college, everything. Even thousand actually students joining theirs. Even I'm trying to learning from today's sessions, because yes, this is true that education system, they do not encourage people to build something new, take challenges, because all of the people actually traditionals, and they think, even parents, because their psychology and their aspect is something like that. I want to send my kids to the best schools, and they will build up their career, they will get a better job, this that, lot of competitions. But it's happening around the world, it's happening around the world. But how we can change this process? Everybody, yes, I know that MIT taking initiative or Stanford taking initiative, because there is a huge populations, billions of populations actually living around the world. And I
Yeah.
think 50% in Asia Pacific, 57% actually youth, those who are under 30 years old. What will be the scientific approach to solve these things? And this is true, we have to build up more startup, and we have to encourage people, we have to encourage students. What's the process? What's the inner scientific approach?
Well, back in the 60s and 70s, we were well along the line of actually creating that scientific approach. It was kind of a test-based aptitude approach to overall placement. But the problem was, at that time, the predominant number of people that were well-educated and coming out through colleges were white males. And so the end result was the test did what they were supposed to do, which was identify the folks with the most competence in a particular area, but the people that were advancing and the people that had the education were white males. And then the result is it came off as being very racist. And so in the United States, we put in place EEOC, the Equal Economic Opportunity Commission, and it killed all the science. Now you had to promote people based on their sex, their race, whatever, and you threw out all the background. And instead, what they should have done is they should have funded education, so they fixed the fundamental disparity in the school systems that were bringing forth a predominant number of white guys and not educating women or people of color, and that would have fixed the problem. And that's why now we're 4 decades later, and we're still having a massive problem here in the United States, because we didn't fix the fundamental problem, which was to really focus on the skills and bring people up so they were well skilled in large companies. Now, the nice thing about entrepreneurial companies is they don't really have that problem. It really, the company forms around a nucleus of people and somebody that has an idea. And the only issue, of course, with regard to race and sex is if you're a white guy forming a company, you're probably going to surround yourself with other white guys, and the same with everybody else. Small women companies tend to be predominantly women, and et cetera. So you don't get the diversity that you really need to build the company up front. And that's one of the problems in either approach, is they can be inherently sexist, inherently racist, predominantly because they don't go to the core of the problem, address that core, and bring people up. Now, a number of large companies are trying to do this aggressively. Cisco, I can name, HP, Dell. They're very aggressive at pushing education into STEM, and they have a lot of women executives that are driving this through. But one of the problems we've got with women executives historically is to make executive rank, they had to be kind of the only, and so they tended to view other women as rivals. And so historically, they haven't been great supporters of diversity programs because it looked like they were taking away their chances. It's slowly changing, but by God, if we just step back for a second and said, okay, we need to fix the education, we need to re-educate the executives that are locked into these stereotypes with regard to race and sex, and actually promote people based on their capabilities and performance, not based on their relationships, what school they came out of. Getting in is certainly important to have it come from a proper school, at least having a proper education. But, Google did a study and they found out that a lot of people that didn't have engineering backgrounds did better in certain jobs than people that did have engineering backgrounds.
Yes.
Diversity education makes a company stronger. You need those other skills to make a company work. And so at the end of the day, I've got great hope that the entrepreneurial side might fix this. The large companies are struggling with it because they're dealing with so much entropy with regard to these bad past practices, and folks like Jack Welch have just kind of messed everything up with things like forced ranking. They were finally driving out of the industry, but to get there, we still have to fix the disparity in education, the very things that Raj is doing with his efforts. We need to do more of that.
Yeah. The question, is so valid. When do we start these kind of training? Okay, and I truly believe this need to be started early in their life. These kids, they have the ability to learn all these things, and this has been my research at thesis at MIT and my research since then. How do we change the mindset of kids in school by taking them through, teaching them design and such? And the kind of outcome has been amazing to see for these kids taking up. They learn to learn on their own. They learn to work with others. They learn to solve problems from a very different. And Rob just said, engineers are pretty much, I think, the worst kind. I'm an engineer, so I can say that. Because if you are taught mechanical engineering, you kind of, most of them go the rest of their life thinking they can only do mechanical engineering. But a 10-year-old kid can figure out, do coding and electronics and several other things, because they don't have the blinders saying, I'm a mechanical engineer. And the education kind of makes you feel that this is what is taught to you, so this is what you should be in life. And that open learning experience actually start to change these kids. They can actually go out and learn anything. It doesn't matter what. And so it is absolutely critical to kind of have that kind of a training, kind of an intervention very early in their life that can change. And it doesn't matter where, because I've taught in rural places where kids come without shoes, where they have never touched a computer. They learn all these things in no time. And I've taught at Phillips Exeter Academy, where kids are so much more exposed to things and much richer. The learning pace is exactly the same. If I can call intelligence as the ability to learn a new concept fast and deep, I see zero difference between these two people. And what is missing is what has been exposed to them. And if you know A, B, and C, it's easy to learn D, E, and F. But if you don't know A, B, C, and if you try to teach them D, E, F, they kind of will struggle. And the question is, how do we teach more kids the basics so they can actually learn on their own and grow from there?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Dr. Eric, yes.
I have a slightly different take on this. The first thing that I have to ask is, what are our metrics? What do you really want to measure in the long run for our kids? Okay. Is it, life satisfaction or earning more money? What is it that we want to use as a proper metric? Because if you don't have a clear metric, then you don't know whether you're succeeding or not. Right. Okay. That's the first step. The second part is I have stepkids. I don't have any biological kids of my own. But if I had young kids now, and someone were to come to me and introduce to me and say, "Hey, we got this new program for kids that will do blah 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 blah," and I think it's going to, am I going to gamble my kids' whole 60, 80, 90 years of life on this new fangled, whiz bang education system, or am I going to use the tried and true? I'm going to use the tried and true, even if it sucks, even if I know it sucks. So my suggestion is, rather than start from the young age, start from the last semester of senior year in college. Take a cohort, 50%, 20% students, and another 20% that is your control group. The 20%, test group. You do whatever you need to do to help them be better in whatever that metric is: higher earning, better lifestyle, lower blood pressure, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And you do it, okay? And it may or may not succeed, but if it fails, you're not really harming anybody, right? Yeah. I mean, they're that much. But if it works, then you go to do it from the fall semester of senior year. Yeah. And then you do this, and you keep measuring them all the way through their life, right? And then you go to junior year and all that, and you move it back. And after like 30-year program, you get it down to 5th grade or something.
Well, so IBM actually ran a program like this, and they actually found the best time to kind of grab kids was in grade school. The reason is because what happens in grade school is you get compartmentalized, particularly based on sex. And if you don't break that compartmentalization, by the time they get to be a senior in college, the women are in art school or something along those lines.
What was their metric there? What was their metric?
They're not going to have the STEM background that they need to pivot to something that they might rather like. I get your point, but I think early on, we do need to educate kids on what it is they should want. We focus a great deal on personal wealth early on. And so a lot of people that go into startups, they figure they're going to get really wealthy. And I don't remember if you guys remember the 90s, but we were given car. You came out with an engineering degree, you got a car, you got a salary. And all those startups pretty much failed because everybody was focused on their compensation and making more money and the rest. And they get their first round of financing and they burn through it, buying houses and cars, and the company would fail. And it's the wrong metric. If you've ever watched, I was lucky when I was a kid. I came from a fairly wealthy family, and my grandfather didn't know what to do with me. So one summer, he gave me a tutor, and the tutor kind of took me around and showed me alternative lives, showed me what would happen if you were an immigrant, showed me what happened if you ended up in prison, showed me what happened if you ended up overdosing on drugs or alcohol or had any of the other problems that I might face in my future life. I looked at the world very differently then. Suddenly education was much more important.
Wonderful.
It gave me a breadth of life experience that helped me decide that, I didn't really want to be a CEO of a big company. Their lives suck. I didn't want to be a multi-billionaire because their lives suck. I wanted to be someplace happily have enough money to do what I wanted to do, but not so much that it became a burden that resulted in sequential divorces, that it created problems for the rest of my life. And so I was able to carve out a place for myself. One of the things I learned real quick, I had an argument with my mentor when I was at IBM, was you don't really want to, if you want to have a long, happy life, you don't want to specialize. You want to be a generalist because the world changes.
Absolutely.
If you're a specialist, you may find your specialty is no longer in demand, and now suddenly, what are you going to do? But if you're a generalist, when the world pivots, you can pivot with it. And if you like small companies, there are tons of opportunity to move as a generalist place to place. And one of the reasons that Microsoft initially recruited me wasn't because I had a high GPA. I didn't. I had like a 3.2, 3.3. But I took everything. And I said, we're starting this company. We kind of need somebody that does everything. Now, sadly, I didn't take that job, but the end result was it gave me an advantage both in terms of approaching the company that I otherwise would have had, and in terms of life by having that degree of breadth.
So interestingly, Eric talked about he just disappeared, so hopefully he'll come back. Starting with college, and that exactly was an experiment I did initially. As part of my thesis, I went to college. And taught them for 5 weeks. So Eric, while you were away, I was saying, you talked about starting with college students. That's exactly what I started my research with. And took 50 kids, taught them all these kind of creative things, design, technology, and such. And 4 years later, close to more than 50% of them became startups. It became entrepreneurs. Okay, this is in a rural place where they had one student startup in the previous 12 years. And 50% of them started, 20 plus companies came out. They created their own ecosystem. Now they have a very thriving entrepreneurship ecosystem with one intervention for 4-5 weeks. Okay. Then my thought was, okay, I felt that college students is a little too late because all their things have already been hardened, calcified a little bit. Okay. So we need to start changing it before they start to have solid ideas of what they can and cannot do. Most of them are wrong. So we said, okay, let me go down to kids. So it started with high school kids. Now I'm working with 6th and 7th grade kids. And 6th and 7th grade kids, they have zero fear of technology. There's zero fear of failure. If I show them how to do CAD, the 3 tools, and create a design of a box with something else, they would just go at it, and they would actually screw up several versions, but that is perfectly fine.
No fear of failure. So what we teach people to be afraid of failure. Not to be afraid of failure, especially in the early years, because they've got to be able to experiment.
Exactly, and parents, of course, parents are trying to do the best by keeping them in the middle of the road, saying, don't go too far, you may fall, and they try to get a best grade you can, go find the best job you can, and settle in, and don't leave the chair after that. Okay, and get married and have kids, and this is the kind of stability is what we are looking for. But in today, stability is kind of you're chasing ghosts, because there's no such thing anymore. Now, how do we? So I tell my students, even kids, when they come and say, what do I do? I said, first thing, don't take career advice from your parents, primarily because their experience was about 20 years back. They're giving you advice that they heard when they were kids and they did not take, and they realize, but the world has changed, now say, so first thing is learn everything, anything that comes your way. Be a generalist, be a system thinker, be a design thinker. That means you're not a specialist at anything, but you've thrown any problem, you have the ability to break it down, understand it, synthesize it, and put it all back together. So it doesn't matter if you're learning about big data or about virus or about something, you should be able to understand any of these things. Okay, so
yes, Mr.
And keep.
Yes, Mr. Eric, are you listening? We cannot.
I am listening. I'm listening. I just that I have to go back to my Wi-Fi, and I cut down bandwidth. Apparently, it's stalling. I was using my phone for my internet access, and now I've reached the cap. They shut me down for some reason or something. So
wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we continue. You join. No problem. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Okay,
you can hear me, right?
Yes.
I can hear you.
Yes.
Well, I don't have any particular thing to say. I agree with you very on the failure part. It says that when I went to college, I got straight A's and everything. That's actually a bad sign. It says that I did not stretch myself. It says that I did not try to do things, fail in. I'm actually very conservative, much of a chicken, only did things that I'm at. And that's exactly what we don't want to see. I mean, if you haven't failed, well, actually the graduate chair when I got my PhD, he said that 99 times you have not failed 99 times out of 100, you haven't tried enough. So that's what it is. You have to try more and do more and fail. Fail on purpose, obviously. You got to fail earnestly. So I don't mind failing anymore.
So actually, you love too. Yeah. I mean, the more stuff you try, the more chance you can find something that you love, and so many people end up in career paths where they're doing something they absolutely hate. And man, I feel sorry for any patients of doctors that spend all those years and they just don't want to be doctors. I mean, it's what their parents pushed them into. They spent all the years, they didn't have any other choices, never looked at anything else. Right. Now they're a doctor. Now what are they going to do? They hate the job. And yet going back and getting re-educated for something else, not very attractive. Though, frankly, some of the doctors that have done that, like doctors that are also engineers, they're incredibly valuable right now because they're a bridge between the two professions. And when you're having a COVID outbreak and you're looking for ways to fix it, the guys that can speak supercomputer and also speak medicine, they're worth their weight in gold right now. Yeah. But the only way you get there is to explore new stuff and find out what you love. And then if you find, my view of life is if you can find a job that's as good as a hobby, you're done. You're doing what you love and you're getting paid for it.
You don't have to work anymore.
Well, it's really not. I mean, it's that's
what you love. Okay, that's not work anymore. Yeah.
I watch a lot of people that I grew up with, and you're going, "Oh, I want to retire early. My goal is to retire early." Well, then what are you going to do? I mean, and you just watch these folks. I still remember my grandfather after he retired. He went around trying to find other jobs to do because he was just bored. And what do you do as next CEO? Retire? You're too old to be a CEO again, and can't go back to being an engineer. You're overqualified. What do? You run into that wall of you hated the job, but now you retired and you hate retirement. Well, what's your life worth?
So Eric, you talked about failure. This is, I believe in the learning phase, you need to fail about 50% of the time. That means you're working on the edge of your competence. So of course you can fall this way or that way. But each time you fail, and if you learn, of course, it builds your confidence to learn. Second thing is expands your zone of competence. Okay, right. and you need to keep doing this. If you here is a non-scientific study that I did. If you look back in your own school or college and say the top 1/3 rank holders, they all have pretty good stable jobs. Middle ones, they're doing so many different things. The bottom third, they have become either entrepreneurs or politicians or or even into crime. Okay, so whatever. Okay, but they're all entrepreneurs, by the way. Okay, they're all the reason I believe is that the bottom third failed so many times that they kind of lost that fear of that failure. They're willing to jump to the next stage. Okay, do things which are outside their comfort very fast. The top third have succeeded so far staying in a narrow lane. They don't want to take a step outside that. Okay, and
exactly.
So this is an unscientific study, but you can actually corroborate it. Okay.
So Rob, you're in the Bay Area, right?
No, I'm actually in Bend, Oregon. I used to be in the Bay Area, but I got tired of the traffic and the lack of water.
But you, Bay Area, there are two schools, maybe several, that are very prestigious, but are probably a great example of bad schooling in an ultimate way, and those are Pali and Gunn, because they contribute a huge number of students who suicide by standing cow train, to them, to nail, for them to succeed all the time. This puts these students right in front of a train to commit suicide. And that is example of a bad education system. Okay. Yeah, and that is the one that we're pushing steps.
Yeah, current education system is a teaching system, not a learning system.
Yeah, agree.
Where a teacher, it's all the sage on stage. You come in, broadcast your information. Hopefully, your antenna is up and your frequency is tuned to pick it up. If not, you're out. But the learning really happens when you can do things. And so my thinking now is, how do you teach? How do you make them learn through doing things? So this whole maker program that I'm running is all about, good thing is that you can connect things like physics and history, and can you create a ship used by the Vikings? Now you can understand how the Vikings, what kind of materials they had, what kind of tools they had, and can you create something and also meet the laws of physics so it actually floats, and can you combine these things so that you can make things and learn both subjects? Okay, and then it actually will be engraved into your brain, the kind of learning that you do when you hands-on do things. Like whole MIT's Mens et Manus, mind and hand, is that you do both, not just sit and think about things alone. You have to work on it and do it, fail, learn from your action. And so, and I think hopefully these schools can bring back a lot more of the hands-on experience and hands-on learning.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sir, get rid of grades. That's one thing.
Get rid of grades. Yeah.
Yes, there are a lot of challenges you are sharing from, let's say, USA context, even Malaysian context, even because you have a best ecosystem from MIT, from Silicon Valley, even from IBM. You learn a lot. But my question is that when I work, because I work a lot with the underprivileged students. I can remember in 2013, that time I engaged with debating community. So I bring 307 underprivileged students from school levels, and from the international arena, from USA and around the world. They go to Bangladesh and they try to teach students that how to communicate. And after that, after this exclusive program, they get a very good result, because that kids, they go to the top school, they get admission in all of the top school, even some of them get very good jobs. Now they are working even USA, Europe, and even Malaysia. Many of them are working. But my question is that vision is very important. Visions and the like guidelines, mentorships is very important. But like example, country like Bangladesh, even country like example Indonesia, Pakistan, even yesterday one of the men joined from Tunisia, Nigeria. They have lack of resources, they have a lack of mentorships, guidelines. I know many universities, they have, let's say, 10,000, 20,000 students, even their academicians, they have a lot of things. Maybe the management and the chairman and the board of director, they try to do something, but how we can connecting dots, how we can build a better ecosystem, especially my target is developing nations, because yes, I can think more about them.
So, Sharif, your point of mentorship is absolutely critical. And this is part of my research and my study. I tell my story. I was born and brought up in a small village in India, in South India. And I had never left my village for a long time. And once I happened to go into a radio repairman's lab, and I saw what was inside a radio. This is when I was 10 or 11 years old. And that absolutely fascinated me. And he told me about how this thing works. And I was like on fire, okay, learning, this whole new thing, which I thought they were little people living in the radio singing all the time, okay, because you could, as a child, you could not understand. That drove me to do things, and I kind of went in different directions in my life. And at every single time, I had somebody who was mentoring me, and such. So I strongly believe having mentors in your life is so important. When you don't have the right kind of mentors, you have the wrong kind of mentors, and you take you to the wrong direction. So it is so important to put mentors in these communities. So I'm creating this program in India on mentor development program, where you take adults from villages, teach them all the things that the kids have been learning in making skills and design skills and problem solving skills and such, and give them a kit of things, and to go back to your village, do all these things. I'll give you a stipend, but go reach a lot more kids, show it to other kids in your village, okay? And this way, one mentor can reach maybe 10, 50 kids, and all it needs is just give that one single spark in their head, saying, wow, this is nice, I want to learn more of this. Then that it starts to exponentially grow. So this is the program I'm creating to, how do we put mentors in the right places? Otherwise, if lack of this, what happens is that they pick up the wrong mentors, and they go in the wrong direction. Right. So yes, mentors is so critical.
Critical.
Yes, sir. From Mr. Rob and Dr. Eric, how do you want to think about this kind of mentorship? And especially, I really want to focus on these developing nations, because I think they have a lot of challenges.
Well, government has to take a significant role in this effort, as well as the industries that exist in those countries. Because the industries, of course, are interested in developing employees, so they don't have to import employees, and so they have people that are well trained. But a government needs to take care of its citizens and advance them, and really that's where it is. If citizenship advances, the country becomes more lucrative. But we've got a problem in both cases, that people tend to think tactically and not strategically, and these programs take place over a period of decades, not a period of quarters. And so one of the things we have to overcome is this focus on immediacy, this focus on, well, we got to make it within this 12-month, 3-month period of time, because these programs take longer than that to mature and develop. We've got to get
election cycles.
Yeah.
Within an election cycle, you mean?
Yeah,
It's ridiculous.
Yes. Even Dr. Eric, what's your point of view?
No, I completely agree on the mentorship. In fact, I'm actually trying to leverage our volunteering group thing to become a provide one of the things, we're offering free delivery. That the people will be like little kids and so forth. What are they going to get? What's their value? Is maybe the customers, people in San Francisco, the customers are well off, wealthy, professionals, and they can provide mentorship. 10 minutes, 15 minutes consulting, whatever, for every student who does this volunteer. So they're volunteer, they get in return mentorship and all that, and you get a vast group of people who would provide. So you're not just one person mentoring. You can get some from a doctor, from a lawyer, from an engineer, and so forth, and you can hear a bunch. And so the student can benefit from that. And that, in return for doing free delivery, it's worth way more than the $15 an hour that you're going to get, guaranteed. It would be a huge amount. And that's one of the ideas that we're thinking about in terms of expanding this.
As long as you train the mentors. I'm a believer that mentors are built and not born. It takes a skill to be a mentor. And as you know, in Silicon Valley, people don't have a lot of spare time. They tend to be very career focused. They work long hours. And I've tried to promote mentorship programs inside of companies, particularly at the CEO level. And if you've been watching a lot of the failed CEOs, those programs are not working very well.
Yeah.
It's because the people that are supposed to be mentoring their subordinates aren't doing it. Even though the life of the company depends on the quality of that mentorship, it requires a particular kind of person. It requires a person that takes it seriously.
Sure.
It requires a person that focuses on the student, not somebody that's just thinking, okay, I'm doing this to get free food delivered. I'm doing this because I want to make a difference in the community, and this is the way I'm contributing. It's important. And I honestly think with mentors, you've got to do a lot of selection. There are a lot of rolling jokes when I was in Silicon Valley about people that took interns, and they basically used the interns to get their laundry, run menial tasks, and the rest. And the kids weren't learning anything other than what it's like to be a grunt. And you've got those people out there, and we need to get those people out of the mentoring programs and put people in that really care about kids and want to develop the kids and take an interest in them. You kind of treat them like they're their own kids and take an interest in the results, as opposed to saying, okay, yeah, I'm doing this to get free delivery, but their time they're really not worth my time. They're so far below me. That's not the way I'd like to start. It is just very important they take this seriously. They take the kids and recognize that these children are going to be their legacy. I mean, everybody's going to forget about whatever the hell you did when you were doing your job. But if you trained a kid and that kid trains another kid, that's our immortality right there. Those kids will take your name and that learning. Yeah. It'll go on for generations, and that's how you live on.
So I have this theory of inverse square law of mentorship. That means, inverse square law is, the formula for gravitational force is m1 m2 divided by d squared. Mass of the two bodies divided by the distance squared. So mentorship has the same thing. I could have a huge mentor living 10,000 miles away, but the influence is low. But if I could have a minor mentor living in my house or living in my neighborhood, I could have a much larger influence. Okay, then divided by d squared is the power of inverse square law. So the question is, even when you talk about bringing in mentors, trained CEOs, that is a very different level of mentors. For what the question that Sharif was asking is that in developing countries, how do we bring these things in? I would say take unemployed, underemployed youth, train them to be mentors, give them a little bit of stipend. Your job is only to go reach these kids and teach them all these cool stuff. But you're going to get better because suddenly you learn technology, you learn problem-solving skills, you learn personal communication skills. Now, after a year, you should get a better job. You become more employable, so that you bring the next mentor it's a rolling mentorship program, where all you're making is, so with very little money, you can make a huge impact in these communities, but not by bringing in CEOs as mentors, but
that's too high. I agree. I was using the example of training other CEOs was a problem, and you figured that would be something that'd be easy.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yes. Even I just want to add, like, most important thing is that for this entrepreneurship, what will be the policy for government? I know few government, even they are developing nations, and they invest 1 year $5 billion for creating entrepreneurship ecosystem, this that, but 90% actually not work. It's a
It is
money
misplaced.
actually. Yes, yes,
It is
yes.
so misplaced.
Yes, that is actually WT Forum. Our objective, that
Yeah.
yes, how we can guide governments, how we can give them advice. So I cannot alone. I cannot. Maybe the
Yeah.
like expert people like you. I know that billions of dollars they investing and nothing happened. The result
So
almost zero.
That's because
Yes.
the
those,
focus is often on the money and not on the metrics.
yeah, yeah.
So that they want something fast. They want to be so, okay, we got $5 billion into entrepreneurship. So I did something with regard to
Yeah.
entrepreneurship, but the metric should be how many people came up and built successful companies.
Exactly.
That's
Right.
the metric, but that doesn't happen within a term of office. That takes a
So
lot longer, and so you have a problem with politicians wanting that quick fix that gets them reelected or gets them brownie points, as opposed to the long-term fix that actually fixes the problem. So it's really a mindset change, and we have to be comfortable with giving people credit for making the effort to make the strategic program viable, as opposed to giving them credit for spending a ton of money.
So there was a book called Boulevard of Broken Dreams by Joshua Lerner. He's a professor at Harvard Business School, which talks about how countries and regions have spent billions of dollars trying to create the next Silicon Valley and completely blew it away. Okay, the reason is that the measure, as Rob said, was startups, investments, and jobs. But your real measurement should have been how many entrepreneurs have you created, because they are going to go through multiple failures before they even start to do something really good. But they want anything from middle of the story and out. They don't want to look at the previous. How do you create entrepreneurs? Nobody ever spent enough time to how do you build entrepreneurs rather than only build companies. Okay, most of the entrepreneurship programs in this world are about building companies rather than building entrepreneurs. Okay, and if you do that, of course, the amount of money that is spent on the right half is so much more, but the efficiency is so low. But if you spend a hundredth of the money on the left half, on the upstream of building entrepreneurs, you can actually change the right half by about 10 to 100 times, because now you have a lot more people coming in who want to start companies, and there will be a lot of failures. The moment you have a lot more people coming in, that starts to create your ecosystem, which kind of start to change everything. And that exactly is my work right now. That is what I'm trying to do.
Yes, yes, Dr. Eric. Yes, Dr. Eric.
I've sent you a document. Yes, I sent you a document sometime last year on how to do the startup for the government by creating basically a sovereign wealth fund. Giving the government share a small part of equity startup. There's no money involved. The government does not put a dime into the company. But on the other hand, it lowers the cost of all the business regulations and all that, all the permits. Here in San Francisco, 18 months, tens of thousands of dollars to get a business of any sort. It's ridiculous. You cannot be a startup and have $100 upfront to start a company. So reduce the costs of regulatory costs to start up, but in return you get a small percentage of the company, nothing big enough to influence it or anything like that. And then you help drive the company by providing them access to the market. Really provide access. All right. If you can provide the market, then the funding will come, growth will come, and everything else will come. Or you fail. Companies do fail. But it's always knocking on the door. That's always the hardest part. And if you can at least show them the door, you don't knock the door for them. At least show them, hey, here's the door, and let them knock the door and let them get the foot in. That's the first step. After that, it's up or not. Then there is holding between the government and the business. with the equity, with a small amount of equity share with that government. And there's no funding from the government. The government does not give a dime to buy that equity. They just say, well, we take the equity in exchange for not charging you $100 worth of price and all that. Probably worth a lot. That's exactly what you're doing. You know.
Yes, but I have a specific questions.
So,
Can
and
you
when
hear
that
specific
company,
questions? Can you hear?
Go ahead.
Yes. Okay.
Go ahead.
Let's focus on this market. Let's say developing nations as a model. So I want to learn. Let's say my students or my community or my government want to learn like what's the let's say MIT has or Silicon Valley has or example IBM has that inside their ecosystems and which will help them to achieve their objective. What's the difference? Many people maybe they do not know what's the difference.
Well, so
Yes.
in each of the large companies you've mentioned, they've got investment arms that look for small companies to invest in as seed investments. Now, the risk, of course, when a large company invests in a smaller company is their end game is the company successful is often to buy the company or to create a competitive hedge against something that they're building in case what they're building doesn't work out. They can flip over, acquire the smaller company and still stay on track. The issue often is when you buy the smaller company and fold it to the larger one, the smaller company is destroyed. It just typically doesn't end up. I think the VC model is probably a better model to work with, but probably modified because the problem with the VC model is it's ethically bereft at the moment. And so you get a lot of these VCs that throw money at things, but they don't really throw education and they don't really throw success at it. They just want to turn their investment. And that's a mistake. I think what government could do differently that way is form teams of people that have certain expertise. They're funded to help find entrepreneurial groups that they can mentor based on their own skill set. And then the goal is to carry them through the process and ensure their success. If that means cutting down on regulation, they have the power to do that. If that means then giving them specific kinds of education, they can do that. That means stepping in themselves and helping the company grow and teach the people how to run it. They can do that, but the model is designed specifically to create entrepreneurial companies and assure their success. It's not to fund and increase the fund return. It is to create successful companies that sustain as successful companies, not to get acquired later on from a bigger company, but companies that grow in the geography and create an ecosystem that's self-sustaining that helps everybody grow logarithmically as opposed to arithmetically. And so the end result is far more successful. But once again, the issue is that takes time. And I'm just really worried that governments are not willing to invest the time to do this right.
And I feel if you try to copy what happened at Silicon Valley or IBM into a developing region, you will fail because so these are two different animals. Okay, you can't. So, but if you can analyze what exactly happened at the place and what are the building blocks of creating this ecosystem, that you can replicate.
Yeah.
But most often, policymakers only look at the large picture and say, okay, maybe if I can bring VCs into this place, or if I build a nice glass building with call it innovation lab or whatever, people will start to come in. That doesn't happen, And so you need to kind of do the right thing for the place, but the basic rules are pretty much the same. Basic rules are empower people, make them do things, educate them, and give them the break that fear of failure. Let them fail under controlled conditions so that they learn to fail and learn and kind of launch from there. If you don't do that, then you are trying to create an ecosystem which doesn't fit your background, and you would have just lost your money. So this exactly is the kind of thing that I'm working on, because it resonates so much with me that I think we are spending too much money trying to copy what happened somewhere else without understanding what were the background chemistry that actually made things work.
Yeah, Silicon Valley wasn't built; it grew organically.
Exactly, it was not planned at all. Silicon Valley
it was farmland.
Yeah, yeah.
Which breaks my heart because my family bought a farm. We should have bought it here, bought it there instead of where we bought it. But in any case, there's farmland broken. And so if you want to recreate Silicon Valley, you got to do it organically, and you can assure the success with a proper mentorship. But you also got to figure out what kind of industry do you want in that particular geography, because some places don't work. I mean, you watch what happened when different countries decided to take major industries and maybe put a car plant in because it's going to have jobs, but the place wasn't set up for that. And so the business just fails at scale, and that's no better either. So you really have to think through the end game and build towards the end game. And the end game isn't return on investment. The end game is having a viable ecosystem that promotes and builds companies.
Yeah. Sustainability, yes.
Yes. Dr. Eric, yes.
Yeah. My advice is don't copy, but be inspired. Be inspired by Silicon Valley. That they can do that. We can do it. But don't be exactly.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's not the solution. Be inspired that is the possibility there. Don't be dejected and say, well, we can't do it. You know, Silicon Valley ain't no better than anywhere else in the world. And if they can do it here, you can do it anywhere. Okay? Be inspired.
Yes, this is very interesting discussions, and World Talent Economy Forum already, even yesterday I make a contract with 500 students that how we can get in touch with this like valuable panel, and we will directly interact with the market. Yes, now in present pandemic situation we can go online, and then we can go for offline activities, and we are also trying to make a better ecosystem, because even another issue is that this kind of country, their problem is that government administrations is they have a lot of bureaucratic issues, that many challenges. So but we want to achieve our goal in a like a positive way, in a more professional way, and how we can achieve this. And most importantly, you people have that kind of knowledge and skill set and expertise, and we can help us to achieve the goals. My last questions to everyone, that what your actually recommendations and the guideline and advice for different kind of entrepreneur startups and whatever it is, even actually not only startup, now small medium enterprise, big organization, everybody actually struggling. Everybody is struggling. Lot of call every day. I at least receive 30 different calls. They said, hey, I have 5-star hotel, I am going down, what can I do? Someone called, hey, I have this manufacturing, it's almost gone. I have my international course, it's almost gone. So I don't know, like, how we can. World Talent Economy Forum is trying to make a better ecosystem, how we can for especially entrepreneurs, mature entrepreneur, new entrepreneurs. I don't know how you can help. What's your advice for them?
So I can take a attempt at that. I believe this is the golden age of entrepreneurship. Let me explain. Normally, entrepreneurs are trying to find the best problem so that people are going to willing to pay, and most often they don't get it right, and the best solution to match that, and they're competing with people, others, to make the solution saleable and make a business out of that. With COVID, you have increased the number of problems by 100 times. All kinds of things that you have not even realized before. Okay, so that's one. Second thing is there's an urgency for solution. We all want solutions today because the problems are there, and we can't wait for a year for some of the solutions. So even if you don't have a perfect solution, it is okay as long as it starts to address it. Okay. And the third is there is money. People want to, if they want a solution, they're willing to pay for it. So put all these things together. I believe it'll be any graduate who's looking for a job. I would say just stop that. Go really look for a problem that you want to solve. Get into it now, because this is going to be the mainstay for a long time. Things are going to stay like this for a long time. Pick a problem, solve it, stay with it, and grow with it. Okay. Now, for existing entrepreneurs, if you think that I have a hotel, it has to be a hotel forever, you have the life has changed around you, and you need to kind of move with that. Okay, that isn't that is the reality on the ground. I can't help it, but that is what has happened. Okay, a lot of things that we felt we have put capital into something, so we cannot change anything else. There are other ways to deal with it, and you need to find the problem. And there are a million problems to be solved. And I don't think such a situation will come for another 100 years. Okay, and I'm the kind of number of problems that need to be solved, and there are existing solutions of few, and put together, I think this is absolutely the best opportunity. And I have to look at it from an entrepreneur's point of view, rather than from people who are suffering. Obviously, if there are no problems, there are no entrepreneurs. Okay, so yeah.
Yeah.
That's true. That is so true. And the beauty of course, is that every solution begets a new problem, and every problems, thousands of new solutions, and it is the only perpetual motion machine in the whole world. And that's why we have grown and built so many crazy devices to solve things. Every solution that we have is a new problem, and then we keep building new things to fix things. And times change, and these things that used to be a solution now a problem, and we have to keep solving. And this thing is what makes, and it's never going to end. The wealth is always going to continue to grow. So don't worry about it. Just keep solving. Identify a problem and solve it. That's the thing.
Yes.
I have a PhD in math, and one of the biggest complaints I have about math teaching, especially in high school, is that math. You learn it once then you're done. It's sort of, you learn how to solve a quadratic equation, and once you've done it, you don't have to do it again ever. That kind of a thing, and that is the wrong takeaway from the learning. Is that you have to constantly solve and resolve and resolve and resolve, and because the situation changes, so that the solution that you have is no longer solvable this way. You have a different way. You have to keep going even the same, because there's factors involved into it. So original solution no longer apply, and that's the thing that we need to be able to inject to students, for one thing. Going back to the education thing.
Yes. So one of the things.
Your turn, Rob.
Yeah, thanks. One of the things that stuck with me with regard to IBM, because IBM is one of the few companies that's been around for 100 years. And Thomas Watson Jr., who was the quintessential CEO of IBM, the son of the founder, before he stepped down, he said, I want to leave the company with one thing, and that's to be willing to change everything except who you are, because that's the only way you're going to survive. A lot of people don't realize that IBM at the beginning, they were making kitchen utensils. Certainly far beyond that now, and they just finished their latest pivot into the cloud. They were mainframe guys, almost went under because they didn't make that pivot fast enough. But they're a company that survives by constantly pivoting. And so if you're to teach anybody anything in this day and age, one is be willing to change everything of who you are. My own career has been like it. I mean, I started off in foods, and then I was in law enforcement, and then I was in shopping center management, and then I got into tech, and I fell in love. And then I became an analyst, and I fell in love even more. But during my time at IBM, I ran a turnaround group of a group called the Tiger Team, and we went into units that were failing and fixed them. And often it was just a case of getting people's head out of the problem and start thinking about the solution. And a lot of times when things are bad, you just so focused on the problem, you can't see the forest for the trees. And sometimes just stepping back and saying, okay, I've got a set of skills. What can I do? And understanding sunk costs, because a lot of people won't move because I put all this money into this business, all sunk costs, forget it. You understand sunk costs, you recognize that money's gone. You're not going to get it back. You now have to think about what you're going to do with the resources you have today. And if you make that decision fast enough, you can pivot. If you wait too long, now you're broke and now you've got real problems. So you have to step back. You have to be willing to change, and you have to be willing to roll with the punches. And if you do, not only is life a lot more interesting because you're changing a lot, anything can get boring after a while, but you can roll the punches. If something bad happens, you're ready to move with the opportunity. And like a lot of people that were doing clothing and they weren't selling clothing. Suddenly they're doing masks and they're selling out. So that it was a matter of just stepping back, saying, okay, what's the opportunity? How can I apply the skills that I have and maybe make a difference? For instance, the hotel person, well, a lot of hospitals are looking for people that kind of know how to manage rooms and stuff. May not be his hotel, but maybe he could find that he go into healthcare, and his skill set, his or her skill set, is going to be well regarded right now, given the pandemic. And then perhaps the hotel could be pivoted to being a localized healthcare facility. It just kind of depends on thinking out of the box, recognizing that what you've got is gone, and being willing to try something new.
Yes, yeah. This is very, very interesting sessions. I want final comments from our panelists. And WT Forum, we are very much action oriented. So definitely, what we learned today, definitely from today, we're gonna take actions. So yes, millions of people we can reach, but first my target 500 students for entrepreneurs. So let's see what we can do together. Definitely, we need more support and guideline, because I believe that like the panelist also guideline for me. You are also mentor for me. So definitely, I try my level best to perform, and your guidelines and your like how you want to move with this WT forum. This is also important for us. So hopefully next time we want to go for an online conference with students, with a very interesting point actually I get from Professor Rajesh, and actually from everyone, that first thing that actually the guardians actually, we have to even teach them that how they can think about their children. This is very important. Even yes, we have a lot of ecosystem challenges. So as much as possible with the governments, with the corporations, and with the local ecosystem, let's see how we can solve the problem. So thank you for your brilliant advice, and the last comment for this session from Professor Rajesh, then Mr. Rob, and then Dr. Eric. Yeah.
Oh no, I have. Thank you so much for the opportunity in addressing all your audience. I think I truly believe anyone can be an entrepreneur. It is absolutely possible. It is to first thing is to understand that, and then this is the work that I'm doing. This is from actually evidence-based research. You could actually change mindsets, and now how do we use it? Governments and administrators and can actually, even corporations can actually implement these kind of things in their regions to start to transform communities from the ground up, and that's the only way we can actually progress. Otherwise, the current processes may or may not happen to work out in the long run. So with that, hopefully we can build ecosystems together.
Yes, sir. Yes. Mr. Rob, yeah.
So thank you, and certainly thank you for the opportunity to do this as well. For me, I think people and government and organizations need to recognize that entrepreneurship really isn't for everybody. It does take a certain amount of willingness to accept risk, and there are people that just don't accept risk for whatever reason, and they won't succeed in this. You have to be willing to accept risk, and you have to be willing to accept failure, because entrepreneurship is about failure. You will fail a number of times before you're successful. Some people are lucky the first time, odds are against it. And so you have to be willing to take the adventure, because that's what it is. It's an adventure. Adventure's fun because there's risk. If you take all the risk, there's no adventure. And entrepreneurship is probably close to the ultimate, at least personal risk, because you're dealing with your life. And you have to be willing to take that step. And if you are willing, there is opportunity. There are people that come from all walks of life and do amazing things because they're focused on trying to do amazing things, and that's what they want to do. And even if they don't ever make it to multinational, they had a ball trying. And at the end of the day, at the end of your life, if you look back and said, I had a great time, you won. And you won a lot more than people that passed with billions of dollars. I had one of the biggest VCs. I've had a chance to chat with him, and basically one of the wealthiest guys in Silicon Valley, and a chance to chat with him, and he wasn't happy. He said, all these friends I had, now that I'm retired, they don't want to be with me. I got this yacht, and the only people that have fun on it are my friends. This is a big headache for me, and I've got this house, and I've had 7 wives. None of them like me. Just a miserable old guy that had more money than a deity, and he was miserable. He died miserably. And on the other hand, I'm willing to bet you his gardener was a lot happier than he was. And so that's what you want to find your muse, take chances, have an adventure, and recognize that your life is your own. Nobody else has to tell you what to do. You'll find your way. You just have to want it enough.
So interestingly, if entrepreneur takes much less risk than a fireman, a soldier, and a policeman.
Personal risk, absolutely.
Okay, so what does the entrepreneur lose? Maybe some money and some time.
Right.
That I believe it's a learning and it's a tuition fee, but you're not actually coming back in body bags. Okay, so entrepreneurs take much less risk than anyone else. Okay, yeah.
No, but my point is that some people just can't accept risk. They've got a big family. They figure that they just don't accept risk, and they're just not going to make it as a. If you're not willing to fail, it's probably not a path for you. But if you're willing to accept failure and take a chance, then you'll have an adventure. I like adventures.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Dr. Eric, yes.
Yeah, I completely agree with both Raj and Rob. Can you hear?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can you hear? Okay. It is not for everyone, certainly. And those who don't want to take the risk, they want to do the more conservative professional jobs, like being an attorney or being even like an engineer. That's a very riskless kind of a thing. Okay. The taking the risk, you have to be fearless, and that is something that has kind of like Raj was saying, the students and the D students, they take all these risks, and they learn how to be fearless. That is some of the things that people need to kind of experience when they were in school, and that's I think that if there's something that can be taught during a young time is how to fail, how to fall down, and how to get up. And if they can feel that and get that experience and realize, hey, if I'm not in a body, then they will armor that would allow them to go and do things that are that most people will chicken out on. I see it. I see a lot in how people think and how people behave. And it does take a little bit of a mindset. So,
yes. Thank you, sir. All of you for your support, advice, and everything. I believe that even I learned from my previous experience that education is important, and like experience is valuable, but other people experience is priceless. So how you share your experience, so it's actually priceless for me, priceless for our audience. So it's really, really very important for our audience. So always Mr. Eric said one thing to me, that let's start. Okay, let's start from today. Let's see how we can make a proper ecosystem for entrepreneurship journey and for this startup and these things. Thank you for your support, advice, guidelines, and your time. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
And nice meeting you, Raj and Eric.
Yeah, nice meeting you, Rob and Eric. I'll connect with you.
Yes.
Yeah. Good seeing you.
Yeah, please.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.